All right, guys. So here are some examples of your old master watercolor, and I'm just going to talk through how you would have to go about these. I've tried to select 5 or 6 that are sort of representative of the options that are in that folder. And as a reminder, that folder is in the course folder that you can find through the link in Blackboard. So this first one here, this is actually a costume sketch from Inigo Jones. And it's pretty simple. So how you would go about painting this, you'd obviously kind of lay in these pencil ink lines here with your gridded sketch, just like we did for the old master drawing. And this is just a couple of washes. I imagine this sort of umbery looking wash here came first. And then there's some blue. There's a blue wash in here. And then there's this kind of red wash here. So this is a really simple one. It's probably about 3 washes. Maybe a little more. You might need some more to get some color in there. And some of these darker colors. And you would have to wait for this umber wash to dry before you put this blue wash in. But that's a pretty simple one here. So this is like a botanical watercolor. It's a little trickier. The first thing you would do to paint this is you'd lay in this sort of greeny blue background wash, and you'd want to lay water over the whole thing, over your whole paper, and then add a thin wash of this color in and kind of let it dry. You want to control that because if it's too wet, you get watermarks. Like here's one right here you can kind of see. Here's one right here where it got a little blotchy. And then it looks like they came back and like with a ochre wash right here and laid that in just kind of in blobs without wetting the whole thing. So that's like the background. And you can see on the leaves that the lightest color on the leaves that there ever is this background color. So that got everywhere behind this plant. And then there's this darker kind of foresty hunter green color here that has been applied to the leaves to make all those textures. So you would have, after you gridded this out and drew it and did those background washes, you'd have a lot of like little kind of finicky detail work with the brush. You'd want to wash in the general shapes, and the very last thing you'd want to try to put in are those like little leafy lines. And if you have like a green colored pencil, it's not really cheating to do that with a colored pencil. That would be fine for the assignment. Down here at the roots, there's some brown, like umbery colors that come in here. So that's how you go about doing that one. This one here actually isn't a watercolor at all. This is almost certainly done with colored pencil. But you can do it with watercolor. The first thing you do after you drew the whole thing would be to lay in this shadow of the scarab right here. And then look at the lightest color that the scarab is, which is somewhere in here, and you'd lay in a wash that's that color, and then you'd look for the next darkest color and lay in a wash that's that color, like right here. One thing to note about this, though, if you're laying in several washes, the washes aren't just several different washes of the same color. This is like a yellowy brown right here, and these are almost purple down here. There's some bluey purple and blue in here. So to get those colors, you want to make sure that you're laying in washes that are subtly different shades of brown to get the depth and the richness that you get from this guy. The hardest part here is actually probably going to be these highlight areas. If you have masking fluid, which we haven't really talked about, if you have it, then you have it. And if you don't have it, then you don't have it. But masking fluid would keep those areas white. If you don't have it, you have a couple options. You could go over your sketch in the end with a chalk pastel. You could try to lift it with a Q-tip, or you could just try really hard to avoid it while you're laying in your washes. This one here is a landscape one. This is probably what most of them in there are. So this is going to be pretty similar to what we did with the landscape painting exercise. You're going to lay in your sky, and your sky wash is this cerulean blue color here. That's like a light blue. And then this kind of umbery wash here. They're kind of laid in together. So I would lay water over that whole area and then lay those 2 colors in and like kind of let them bleed together. Then you have your background, this like bluey mountain back here. And I go ahead and lay that color in, and I lay a wash in here. That's like this lightest color here. Of this foreground, and you have this midground here of this house over here. So I'd lay that in too. So figure out what color your washes are, and you just want to work from light to dark. So figure out what the lightest color in each section of your painting is. Complete the sky, complete this midground, complete this little house, and then come into your foreground and lay in these blotchy colors of this rock and these trees. And things like this dark shadow here and the things that really define the shape of your trees are going to come last. So the most striking things about your painting are going to be the last things that you do. So make sure that you're comfortable with that as you're going through. You're going to not love your painting until the end, when all of a sudden it's going to kind of pop out at you. And this is another one that's a simpler kind of landscape. This one really only has one layer of atmosphere, but we've got this water layer here that's kind of interesting. You can lay kind of an ochre wash into the sky, or a raw umber wash into the sky to sort of get that color. And then with the water here, what you'd probably do is lay water down on this whole water area, and then only put the paint in this area and let it just kind of bleed out naturally, and just leave it, don't touch it. And then this here is a drier working. You'd lay in your base wash just like we did with everything else, like wet and wet, and then all the subsequent layers from that would be wet onto dry, meaning your background's dry when you paint on it. And that has some cool architectural ruins going on there. So this is mostly like black, ochre, umber, and then there's some greens and yellows in here. Make sure when you're doing bushes, though, that your first color, when you're doing greenery, your first color you lay in is a really yellowy green. If you don't put that in first, you'll never get it. So that light green color there is what you really want to aim for. And these last two are, this is another botanical study. So this has no background. You would just have to paint these flowers. And this you would definitely paint. You'd lay down wet and wet for like the wash on the stems, the beginning wash on the stems and the leaves, but then you would exclusively work wet into dry. That's the only way you're going to get these crisp colors like you see here on the leaves. And this is a really old sketch. This is simpler. If you wanted to get something muddy like the background, I might do a wet into wet wash of blue and like yellow ochre or raw sienna, and actually blot it with like a paper towel or a cloth or something so it got blotchy like this is. This is actually a weathered look, but it's worth learning how to do to get that blotchy weathered look. And then this is just really simple, like a green wash and a purple wash on there. This floral stuff on here is obviously done after that first wash, and there is definitely at least a second wash with darker versions of those colors you can see here in the green and in the purple. So you'd have to let the original wash dry and then come back and do those shadow colors. So that's some information on how you might go about doing some of these watercolors, and you should use that information to choose a watercolor that meets your interest and skill level.